All right, so we're back on the next live stream. Hopefully, this one won't freeze immediately. I'll pick up with gluten since we're talking about the whole grains. Gluten has been so much in the forefront of popular culture and the pop diet advice. And so many people have gone gluten free without even really understanding what gluten is. So, gluten is a protein found in wheat products, and it's definitely in whole wheat. So, Dr. Greger kind of goes over it, but there are only certain people who need to avoid gluten. One of those would be celiacs. Thank you guys for making the jump over. I appreciate it. Okay. Oh, Lady of the Snowy Lake, she just got LASIK, so she'll be mostly listening rather than typing. Well, I hope your eyeballs are healing well. Goodness. And let us know how it goes, yeah? So, someone with celiac disease has to be medically gluten-free. Dr. Greger doesn't talk about it, but people who are have autoimmune diseases tend to do much better sans gluten. That would include people with autoimmune hypothyroid, the Hashimoto's disease. It appears that people with Hashimoto's are really triggered by gluten. People, what was the other one? With a wheat allergy, obviously, where you would go into some form of anaphylaxis upon eating wheat. And then the last would be the gluten sensitive, the non celiac gluten sensitive people, which Dr. Greger talks about in here. Like, does it actually exist? I have to be careful about the facial expressions I make now because I may freeze in it. It's like growing up and your mom was like, "Don't make that face; it'll freeze that way." that's a serious concern for me right now. So I think I'm one of those people who's gluten sensitive. And it makes me feel silly because I'm like all logical and, I don't want to be special and god damn it, I want to eat bread and pizza. Like, please just let me eat pizza. But I get a stomach ache and then my face breaks out. And so after years of trial and error and trying to figure it out, like I just can't do it. One broke vegan says it makes my eczema bad, and soy really does too. Yeah, and you just have to know what foods kind of trigger you. Yeah. 5X Disney fan says quinoa kills my stomach. Really bad pains after eating it. There are some foods too that the fibers are new or just the food is new and it kind of kicks you in the gut on the way down, and sometimes that gets better for people, sometimes it doesn't necessarily. Don't freeze, I see myself glitching. All right, yeah, so it can all just depend on you as well, yeah. Someone says they get constipated on gluten. I feel you there. Evelyn says, I'm sensitive to beans and gluten. Still trying for the beans, though. Oh, yeah, beans, that would be frustrating. I do love my beans, but, gluten sensitive. 5X Disney fans, I'm gluten sensitive also, and everyone says it's in my head. And I guess that's just an opinion that everyone can have, and I'm still not going to eat gluten. Unfortunately, I do tend to, I feel like every time I go to a potluck, I end up being fed gluten. And I'm just gonna stop socializing, full stop. All right. Love Hope Life says quinoa has been my go-to since brown rice slows my digestive system. Yeah, that's a good option. I I don't eat quinoa very often because it's so expensive, but we do like it, and hey, you know. Lucy says, I just got back from vacation in Costa Rica. Ooh, and my skin is still breaking out so bad. I was admittedly eating a lot of oily processed food. So I think gluten might give me issues too. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about the breakout, but I do feel you, it's like, it's so frustrating because sometimes I just want to indulge in something and not have 2 to 3 weeks of consequences. I've talked about it quite a bit in the acne videos and the gluten videos especially, but I thought I had been gluten-free for at least 6 or 9 months, doing a really good job at it, and then I went to a potluck, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just have the gluten, and I ate a lot of gluten. It was like 14 months of cystic acne breakouts that just, it got so out of control. And you know, it's ridiculous, but now we're back to it. Lady's dog says, I'm gluten intolerant. I get horrible stomach problems when I eat it. Yeah. The needy homemaker. Luckily, none of those things seems to bother me. I always go half brown rice and half quinoa when I cook rice. That's good, yeah. Because of the cost of quinoa, that's a good idea. Condos says, is gluten an accumulative effect? Can you be okay eating it at first, but you keep eating it and you can start to get symptoms after a while? Yeah, it can happen that way as well. It seems to be tied in quite a bit to gut health. So if someone takes a lot of antibiotics or don't freeze, or has a lot of processed foods in their diet and not a lot of fiber, then you can end up developing kind of a gluten intolerance thing. It also depends like how much fat you eat, because when you eat a high fat meal, it makes the lining of your intestines more permeable, so more stuff can get through. Stuff like potentially partially digested gluten proteins could get into your bloodstream and you could develop an issue. Um, or it could just be like a personal sensitivity issue, and it can be hard to say. But the one downfall I would say with being on a gluten-free diet, as most people think of it, is that they end up replacing all of the glutinous foods that they were eating with super processed, gluten-free, packaged foods. So again, we just come back to try to avoid the processed stuff. Even if it's gluten-free, it's still very often quite unhealthy, really processed, really refined. They're often full of added oils and salt and everything else that humanity drenches their food in to make it taste hyper palatable, right? So even if you're on a gluten-free diet, still stick to the whole foods as much as possible. And that is the part that can be so hard about eating whole foods, is that you can't always trust the front of the package. It'll say, they get really deceptive with their marketing. Dr. Greger talks about it in this chapter about how it'll say, 100% wheat, and people just assume that's whole wheat or 100% natural, or, contains whole grains, which means that it could literally contain 2 whole grains, and then the rest is refined, and they just label it. So he says to read the ingredients, which is so important, and make sure it says like whole wheat flour, and then to also pay attention to the fiber to carbohydrate ratio, which got me Googling nutrition labels for a bunch of my favorite foods and seeing what's allowed and what isn't. Well, a bunch of my favorite foods, it's like things that Levi eats, essentially. So the foods that I buy regularly for him, like bread and such. So a lot of the breads that he eats, like, it's not a good ratio. Some other ones are perfectly fine. I looked at the Dave's Killer bread, and it does have good ratios, at least 2 varieties that we tend to get, which is like the Power Seed and then the super whole grain variety. I can't remember what it's called, but they have a good ratio, but the sodium is really high. So you can end up, someone like Levi who eats quite a bit of bread, he can end up really getting a lot of salt. Okay. The needy homemaker says, is Ezekiel bread gluten-free? My understanding is that Ezekiel bread is made with whole wheat. So if it contains wheat, then it contains gluten, even if that's whole wheat, yeah? So to the best of my knowledge, unless there's a specific gluten-free variety of Ezekiel bread, it does contain gluten. 5X Disney fan says, do you think you can get past gluten sensitivity after years of staying away from it? That's a good question as well. That was my theory when I ate a bunch of gluten, like 15 months ago, and I thought, okay, well, I feel so good, my digestion is great, maybe I'm not gluten sensitive anymore. And I ate it, and I didn't get a stomach ache. And I was like, yes, maybe I can do this, but then my face broke really badly. So I'm not sure. You might be able to heal your gut to the point that it doesn't affect you anymore. Don't freeze. But you also might not. And certainly, as Dr. Greger says, if you have issues with gluten, definitely, definitely, definitely get tested for celiac disease. It can be tough to get the diagnosis as far as false negatives coming back from diagnostic tests. So I would say, like, be persistent if you think you might have celiacs, because it is imperative to your health to get an accurate diagnosis so you can be medically gluten free. Okay? All right. Yes, Nathan says he's having issues with the live stream. It does appear to be the internet on my end, as well as perhaps issues with other people's internet from time to time conflicting. I don't know. It's a very frustrating issue. I agree. Ladies Dog says the gluten-free products here in Germany are quite good, but yes, it's still processed, and I have to admit I eat way too much of it. It's easy to do, they're tasty. 5X Disney fan says it's not easy here, you can't just go to different doctors. Is it one blood test for Hashimoto's? No, it's really difficult to diagnose Hashimoto's, and it's a bunch of different levels that kind of might suggest that you have it, and it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. It can be like that with a lot of autoimmune issues. All right. One Broke Vegan says there's this vegan gluten-free bread at a co-op near me. It's processed though, obviously. Do you think it's all right? They make it there though. It depends on how much oil they use to put in it. A lot of gluten-free breads, especially gluten-free vegan breads, are full of oil. So that also depends on how much oil you want to be consuming in your diet. It is processed, so it's going to be like lower in fiber and, excuse me, all of that kind of stuff. Um, if it were me, I mean, in my life, I choose not to consume those foods just because I know how hard it is for me to regulate my intake and know when enough is enough, and I don't want to get in the habit of filling my body with those foods that are processed and spending that kind of money on gluten-free products, because they do tend to be kind of pricey. But it's one of those things where if having, toast in your life is something that makes your life worth living and you just love it and you don't want to think about life without it, then enjoy it, okay? Okie dokes. Sylvia says, I cut out all bread and feel wonderful. No more bloated belly. Well, that's good. Alley Cat Girl, welcome. We're talking about gluten. Ah, Shannon made it. Hi, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Lucy says, I get Mestimacher bread. It's super dense and comes with in the little square package. Oh yeah, I think I know the one that you're talking. It's made with sunflower and rye. It's a nice alternative, less processed, but not super similar to traditional breads. Yeah, I think I've had that stuff before, but I do believe, because rye has gluten in it, not as much as wheat, but it still does have some. It's rye, barley, oats, and wheat are usually contain gluten. Oats don't have intrinsic gluten in them, like they don't grow and produce gluten, but they're usually contaminated with gluten. Okay? So I do have a video about gluten if you guys have more questions about that. All right. All right. So Mai says, Lily, have you tried making your own breads? I've heard of some people who can more easily digest homemade bread with their control over ingredients and fermentation and stuff. On a similar vein, Schmoopsophy says, I make a very similar oat bread, only has yeast, water, and a small amount of maple syrup in it. It's very good. That sounds lovely. I have read that, a sourdough type bread where you don't use yeast, you use the natural microbes to ferment your bread. That those microbes kind of pre-digest the grains and make it much more digestible and make the nutrients more available for us humans. I've never tried doing it just because it's not something that I've ever. I mean, I would love to make my own bread, but I feel like having a sourdough starter and keeping that alive would just be more time and energy and thought than I can afford right now. And since it's not that important to me, like I'm living without bread and I'm okay, that's just not something that I want to do. But I think it would be a beautiful thing, and I wish I had a friend that did it and gave me delicious sourdough gluten-free bread. I don't even know if that is a thing that exists. Okay. The Needy Homemaker says, would sprouted grains have the same effect with gluten? For someone with like celiacs or something, definitely. They should not eat sprouted wheat. If it was made with other grains, perhaps that would be fine. For people with just like the gluten sensitivity, I've heard of anecdotal stories of people who eat the sprouted wheat and they're fine, but I can't say for sure. Okay, so let's move on from the gluten, and I think that's about it for the whole grains chapter that really stood out to me. If you guys have anything else that you would like to add about the whole grains, go for it. Now would be the time. Otherwise, we will get ready to move on to beverages, which could be a good time to address Lady of the Snowy Lakes question, which is, speaking of fermentation, what's going on with kombucha? Is it really bad for us? Good question. In fact, I need to make a note just to make a video about kombucha because I get asked about it all the time. So Dr. Greger says that like someone went into a coma or something after drinking kombucha. I can't remember the story, but he said that it can be an issue. Certainly, if you eat or drink a ton of kombucha at a time, I think that might be something to be concerned about. Kombucha is made of tea and then it's fermented. Um, the it's like a symbiotic relationship between bacteria and fungus. It's called a SCOBY. You put sugar into your tea. You put the SCOBY into the tea. The SCOBY eats the sugar and poops out acetic acid, which is essentially vinegar, and that is what makes your kombucha. So most people brew their kombucha for about a week. That agrees that, sorry, I read a comment. That means that the SCOBY at that point hasn't eaten all of the sugar and pooped out vinegar, so there's still quite a bit of sugar left in that kombucha. If you let the kombucha continue to ferment for like 10 to 14 days, which is how I used to ferment mine, it gets really vinegary, and it's actually not that good. It's not something that I super enjoy drinking. One option, if it becomes quite vinegary, is you can like smush it with fruit or something. Really ripe peaches was my favorite, and I would just like smush fruit into the kombucha, and then it was delicious. But the way that most of us are drinking kombucha nowadays, it's really just like a sugar sweetened beverage at this point. People say that it has lots of great probiotics in it. Does it? I haven't seen any studies on that. Not to say that they don't exist, I just haven't seen them. I don't know. But also, you drink it and it goes into your stomach, and most of the probiotics would die there. So, is it even getting to your intestines? I don't know. It does have vinegar in it. That's acetic acid. It's proven to be good for us. You can get that from using vinegar. That's cool. But and also supposedly kombucha is very detoxifying, which I'm not going to say isn't true. Maybe. If you brew your own, great. But I think that the stuff that you buy in bottles or that are becoming very popular around the world aren't necessarily as good. I've mentioned it several times in past videos and live streams, but the place locally who makes kombucha, they brew it in these huge metal vats, and you're not supposed to brew kombucha in metal because kombucha supposedly pulls the metals out of the vessel and brings it into the kombucha, and then you drink it and you're exposed to heavy metals. So I think you need to know where the kombucha is coming from and how it's being brewed, and then try to get the sugar content down by brewing longer. Okay? So that was probably like a very long answer. Sorry it's not yes or no. Um, Grace says lol at Levi, scurrying in the background. Yeah, he does this thing where he like slides across the floor. He loves it. Kelly says, I think pretty much all the cases of people that got sick from kombucha were people who made kombucha themselves and didn't know what they were doing or drank homemade kombucha by someone else. Yeah, it's easy for the kombucha to get contaminated. And even when I was making it, there were a few times where I had two bowls going at the same time, and then one bowl just looked like really funky. And I was like, no, not gonna do it. And you have to be really good with your hygiene and keeping everything, it's like you have to pre-boil and make sure that everything is super disinfected, and, maybe not everybody's up to it. Levital says, yeah, I can't do caffeine. I quit years ago because I used to get migraines all the time. Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, okay. Jessie Kitten says, probably not the healthiest thing ever, but my friend takes soda water, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and cranberry, apple, or grape juice, and it tastes like kombucha. Quite different, but, if you're gonna drink something, it doesn't sound like the worst thing to drink. 5X Disney fan says, okay, that sounds gross. I may be over kombucha. Didn't drink it very often, but now I'm good. All right. I mean, I might brew my own kombucha again one day. I don't know. It's fun and like it's yummy to drink, but whatever. Jerry K says, I read the average person has 15 pounds of fecal matter in them. I think they're full of crap. Thoughts on colon cleanse? I think eating plenty of fiber and pooping regularly and getting all of that built up junk out of your body is a really good idea. As far as colon cleanses are concerned, some of them are done with fiber supplements. Some of them are done by essentially putting a hose up your butt and filling it with water, and I don't think that's a great idea, personally. All right. So we will move on to beverages. All right. Oh, and Love It All says, no more migraines anymore. I went vegan and mostly plant-based, and now I rarely get them. That's fantastic to hear. So happy for you. All right. Okay. I'm not frozen on my end, so maybe if you push the refresh button, that might help. Okay. Kelly S. says, some of the colon cleanses are done with potent laxatives. Yeah, you get like the detox teas and then the chemical laxatives as well, and that's, I mean, if that's what floats your boat, but I don't think it sounds sustainable or particularly healthy to me. All right, so moving on to beverages. Dr. Greger says 5 glasses, so 5 12-ounce glasses of fluids per day. It's about 60 ounces. I think that sounds a little bit low as far as I'm concerned in my experience. But I won't say that he's wrong. I would just say that my body definitely appreciates more fluid intake. And I feel like I would like to see more of kind of a disclaimer in this chapter of 60 ounces is kind of a baseline. If you exercise more, if you sweat more, if you're big, like a big guy like Levi needs a lot more fluids than someone like me. So, I feel like there's a little bit more wiggle room than just 60 ounces a day. But water, super important for life. The World Health Organization says that our total fluid intake, so that would be fluids that we drink and eat. Women need 8 to 11 cups per day. Men need 10 to 15 cups a day. I think that sounds about great. The Adventist Health Study, they found that people who drank, 2 or more cups of water a day had a much lower heart disease risk, probably because it lowers the viscosity of the blood, so the thickness of your blood, which makes it a lot easier for the heart to move blood around your body. Because if you think about it, if it's thick, your heart would have to squeeze a lot harder and pump more often to move it. So, 5X Disney fan says, I'm so bad with water in the winter and don't really enjoy herbal teas either. I stand that. I remember being cold when I lived in Washington and elsewhere and just not wanting to drink. I did try a lot of different herbal teas and found some that I did like a little bit more, so I could take in warm fluids. Just to try to increase my water intake as well. And then, of course, I found that when I exercise during the winter, it warms me up quite a bit. So I then feel more thirsty and able to drink. But Equivocal Truth says, I drink hot water in the winter. That is, bless you. I don't like the taste of plain hot water, but if it's your thing, it's your thing. Mai says, drinking plenty of water is also good for the poops. Absolutely. Being well hydrated is extremely important for your colon health and for not absorbing a ton of poo toxins out of your large intestine. Of course, it almost freezes right when I say poo toxin. All right. Schmoop's Fee says room temperature water is way easier to drink more of. It goes down faster and easier. And see, I find that cold water is easier to drink. I mean, I live in a hot climate, but I find that if I have ice cubes in my water bottle, I drink it much faster. So, the Adventist Health Study, too. I've read so many studies about them, and it's like a religion that. Oh, Satisfy, I'm sorry. I like Schmoopsify, though. The Adventists, it's a religion that dictates that you're supposed to eat healthy. And so I drove by the Adventist church locally here the other day, and I was like, maybe I'll go to church there. Who knows? And then I saw this huge banner that said, "The world is ending soon. Is your soul going to hell?" It's like, so close. So close. I did make a couple videos on water and fluid intake. You guys are obviously more than welcome to watch those if you haven't already. Another big way that I get in my fluids is through my smoothies and through my teas. This morning I got up and we stretched out for a few minutes. We did some yoga and we had this chapter on beverages playing on the How Not to Die audiobook, and halfway through the yoga I was like, I'm sorry, I gotta go brew some teas. So I brewed 4 cups of herbal teas. So I've been having those today. October Ariana says, I drink ginger lemon tea I make every morning, which is nice for colder days. Yeah, absolutely. And the ginger is nice and naturally warming too. Grace says, alcohol question. I've been super sensitive to alcohol since going vegan 3 years ago. I know you don't drink, but did you have the same experience? Yeah, it's like the cleaner I got, the more, I feel like I can just smell alcohol and get buzzed. I think the last time I had any, a friend of mine had some champagne and they gave me a little glass, and I took 2 sips and I was drunk. So I've definitely had that experience too. Mai says, you know how coffee can be like a diuretic? Do you know if any teas are like that too? I know there are some herbal teas that are specifically diuretics. I don't remember those off the top of my head during this live stream, but if you looked up, diuretic herbal teas, it would definitely tell you what those are. All right. May says, Equivocal Truth says, at my, caffeine is a mild diuretic. Anything that has caffeine will draw out water. Yeah, Lucy says cranberry and dandelion are diuretic. Thank you for contributing that. Um, it's it's all about, how much water it draws out, though, because if it draws out less water than you drank by having it, then it's still a hydrating beverage. When you start getting into things, alcohol especially, like wine and hard alcohols, those are very dehydrating. So, and the weirdos are starting to come out, absolutely. Da, da, da. Lady of the Snowy Lake says, if you're using a diuretic, make sure you drink lots of extra water. Yes, that's not something that I would recommend doing on a regular basis. One Broke Vegan says, do you recommend playing with water intake to see how much works for you? I've been making a point to drink more because of you, but since I've been doing it, I feel kind of dehydrated on less than 96 ounces. Yeah. I've gone back and forth over the years. Sometimes I'll drink, almost a gallon a day, and it's hard, and sometimes I feel overhydrated. I've drank as little as, 40 ounces a day, and I definitely feel dehydrated there, but I have found that the more I drink, it feels like the more I drink, the more I need, because my body gets more used to having that amount of fluid intake. So it does kind of depend on how good your body is at absorbing that. It also depends on the electrolytes and other minerals that are balancing that water intake. Um, so it's something that you have to play with, and figure out what feels best. And that changes for me. Like sometimes I need a lot of water, sometimes I don't. I feel like I don't need as much. It's fluid, so to speak. All right. Mai says, thanks guys, you are all the best. Yeah, I'm looking more for things to avoid to keep my beautiful water. Oh, I understand, to avoid diuretics. All right. Britt says, I've been drinking 3 to 4 liters a day and have noticed I do feel dehydrated when I get less than that. Yeah, your body gets used to it, and, it feels great to be hydrated, and I feel like once we are hydrated, it's much easier to sense and pick up on this is what it feels like to be dehydrated. And I know I felt like that for a lot of my life without even knowing it. Sorry, helicopters going over. All right. And it's gone. Violetta says you keep skipping my totally normal questions about dairy and SSRIs. We are doing the How Not to Die book club, so specifically I'm trying to keep us on topic about that. This isn't necessarily a free-form live Q&A, and you're asking questions that require a deep dive. So I'm trying to keep us on the subject of beverages at the moment. It is not purposeful, it's just not the appropriate time to talk about. Okay. I think the key for me anyways is to find a kind of container you love to drink out of. I try to drink my 24-ounce container on the way to and from work, about 30-minute commute. Yeah, that's a great idea too. I've found that containers matter. I like to switch my containers. I kind of like cycle between them. I found that, there's a specific type of bottle I like to drink out of first thing in the morning, and then I switch to a Hydro Flask. I do a similar thing that, I don't want to say it now. Schmoopsify. I'm just going to say it. She said it's pronounced like satisfy? I don't know. Anyway, I do a similar thing when I'm driving. If I drive into downtown, it takes about 15 minutes, and then I drink my container at that point. All right. The Needy Homemaker says, do you filter your water because of quality issues with your tap water or because of personal preference? My whole town is on a well, no fluoride or additives, and I'm not sure if I should invent a filtration system. That's a great question. I filter because of personal preference, and there's like one or two contaminants in the Hilo tap water that is questionable. Like, it's not terrible, but it's definitely questionable, and if I can avoid that, I will. Our water is also chlorinated, and I don't like that taste, so I like to get the chlorine taste out of it. All right. Lady of the Snowy Lakes says, has anyone tried the hibiscus punch? I second that. I can't get a hold of cranberries, but... Grace says, I tried the container theory, and now I have a cabinet full of assorted water jugs. I feel you there. It's easy to become one of, like, the water bottle lady. It's like the crazy cat lady, except more hydrated. Love It All says, water is so good with cucumber or mango, and it... If y'all are having a hard time drinking water, that sounds good. Throw some mango in there. Britt says, I heard that there have been pieces of plastic found in bottled water, like Nestle lately. Oh, I haven't heard that. That's... I'm not surprised. I mean, apparently that stuff is just, like, contaminated with chemicals and bacteria and all kinds of junk anyway, so you can't even trust it. Vegani Santa says, do you reverse osmosis your water? I do not. I just have a Berkey filter, and that seems to be totally sufficient for me. I did address my thoughts on reverse osmosis in my video on hydration and water intake. One Burke Vegan says, I looked up mine after one of your videos, and it has 2 types of bromine and like 6 or 7 other contaminants. Whew. Hopefully our water filter takes most of it out. Yeah, it's a little like... The Needy Homemaker says, microplastic was found in most brands of bottled water lately. Ugh, gross. Big Timer says, my cousin's birthday is tomorrow. He is your biggest fan. Oh, his name is Nick Gers. Hi, Nick. Happy birthday. I'm honored to know that I have a biggest fan. And I hope you have a wonderful birthday tomorrow. Thank you, Big Timer, for letting me know. Love It All says, what is a Berkey? A Berkey is a type of water filter. I can't remember the website. I think it's Berkey.com. But I'm not sure if you can see it. It's this big stainless steel water filter. I talk about it in my video on water filtration and why I chose that as the water filter that I use. That should give you all the info that you need. Okay, so coffee. Is coffee healthy? I recently did a video on it, so I went a little bit more in depth there, but yes, it appears that black coffee is healthy once you add a ton of sweeteners and a ton of fatty foods. It's not as healthy anymore. So if you do love the taste of coffee, enjoy your black coffee. They say that less than 4 cups a day is best for young people, although there have been some studies that have found lower mortality, like ridiculous amounts of coffee. But I mean, if it were me, I would stick to 1 or 2 cups a day. I don't drink coffee. I prefer my tea. Coffee tends to give me like acid reflux, which Dr. Greger mentioned. It definitely encourages GERD. It can increase your glaucoma risk, increase epilepsy episodes, and it can raise your cholesterol. So it does come with some issues, but coffee itself, you know, it's been studied, and trust me, I wanted to be on the train that demonized coffee. In fact, I was on that train for a little while, and you know, the caffeine issue is a whole other thing because people are so dependent on caffeine. Um, so I question the health of using substances that are high in caffeine, like coffee, like energy drinks, to kind of sustain ourselves. I think that's really taxing on our bodies, really bad for the adrenal glands, and coffee abuse, I have to question. But if you love coffee, I don't think you have to feel bad about that, okay? Okay, checking in the comments. Oh, thank you. Jessica White says, coffee gives me the shakes, but I give it anyway. I drink it anyway, excuse me. I'm sorry, gives me the shakes. Yeah, coffee gets me a little jittery too. Now, that'll kind of segue us into the conversation on tea, because tea has caffeine in it as well. You know, green tea or black tea has about a third of the caffeine that's in a cup of coffee. So it definitely still has. But now my body seems to be okay with it, and I kind of slowly, don't freeze, reintroduced the caffeine from the tea into my diet, and I'm feeling okay, but you know. Chocolate is me fave says, I'm not a coffee fan. I hate the taste, and I'm not affected by it at all, despite the fact that I barely drink it. Maybe if you added chocolate to it, maybe you'd be more of a mocha fan, right? Am I right? Rockin' Roberta says, when I eat fruit in the morning, I have a lot of energy. Yeah, eating fruit and then getting hydrated, and who even needs coffee? But some people just love that taste. 5X Disney fan says, I drink decaf just because I love the taste, but I can't handle the caffeine, just on the weekends. I feel you. I love that taste too. Levi, heat tea are all the same plant. They're just kind of processed and picked differently. So black tea has been fermented and processed, so generally speaking, it's a little less healthy. Green tea and white tea. Green tea is just the mature tea leaf that's simply been dried. White tea is the immature green leaf that has simply been dried. It appears that like white tea might be the king of teas, so to speak, and the beautiful thing is that you can cold brew it. Have you guys done cold brewing at all? Because I have kind of fallen in love with cold brewing, especially white tea. I got this really yummy little packet of white tea that I've been playing with, and I think I'm gonna try to order it in bulk, but I've been cold brewing it, and it's so freaking refreshing. I love it, and it's like full flavored. You wouldn't even think. I just put the tea and some room temperature water in a jar, leave it out on the counter overnight. I strain it and drink it in the morning, and then I usually take the tea that I strained out and then I hot brew that, and it's so good. Yeah, I see a lot of you guys have been cold brewing. Mai says she cold brews her coffee, and it's really good too. Yeah, there's so many great ways that you can consume food, and then you don't even need a hot pot. You have to boil it. Lady of the Snowy Lake says, I cold brewed hibiscus tea. It's a great placement for soda for my family. That is a wonderful point. It is a fantastic way to replace soda. Kelly S says, definitely going to try cold brewing tea once it stops being so darn cold outside. Yeah, I feel you. On a cold morning, like, cold brewed tea does not sound appealing. So luckily it appears that if you hot brew tea, you don't lose out that much, especially if it's like green tea. But for white tea, it appears that cold brewing is best as far as the antioxidants go. All right. Anna says, if you brew white tea too hot, it comes out bitter. You should brew cold or room temperature. Yeah, and it has such a nice taste when it's cold brewed. All right. Rockin' Roberta says, have you tried guayusa? It's a tea. It's got a clean caffeine buzz. I have never tried that. Nor have I tried to pronounce it before now. Oh. Oh, Love It All says, I don't like cold drinks. I like room temperature. Do you guys like licorice tea? Yeah, I love licorice tea. I've heard it can have like some effects on your blood pressure or something like that, but it's also an adrenal tonic, so I just drink it sometimes. Um, it's lovely. It is lovely. Okay, the one thing that we need to talk about, I feel like, is sweeteners. So, Again, I did a video not too long ago about artificial sweeteners, but if you can just get used to not sweetening your food, you'll be much better off in the long run. I know it sounds disgusting. You know, when I first started drinking unsweetened green tea, I was like, bleh. Like, this is not pleasant. This is not good. Not a fan, but I made myself do it anyway. And now when I drink unsweetened green tea, it actually does taste pretty good to me. I enjoy it, you know? With beverages, it's easier to get them down when they're sweetened. I get that. I definitely get that. Um, Dr. Greger recommends if you're going to use a sweetener, you can use one of the green light sweeteners, which would be blackstrap molasses or date sugar. I will probably be switching to date sugar after I use up my last, like 20 pounds of coconut sugar that I bought in bulk. And that's fine by me. I have been cutting down the amount that I've been using the coconut sugar and just processed sugars in general, and that feels good. It's definitely, the taste gets affected. There's another helicopter gonna come over, guys. I don't know if you can hear it, but if you can just get used to not having sweet tastes, you'll be better off. Because, there's stevia, which is natural, it comes from a plant. Cool. There's some questionable things, if you have a ton of it, it could make toxic byproducts inside your intestines. I would prefer avoid that. I don't know about you guys. And then there's the sugar alcohols that Dr. Greger talks about. There's xylitol, which is known to pull fluid into your intestines and potentially give you the shits. Sorry, I know there was a more eloquent way to say that, but I couldn't avoid. So xylitol is probably not your best sweetening. I do have a bag of xylitol that I use to make my toothpaste because supposedly it's really good for your enamel. But there's erythritol, which Dr. Greger talks about, which is a different sugar alcohol. It appears to not have any issues, but I'm gonna be straight with you guys. It creeps me out. I don't necessarily trust it. It feels like it might be one of those foods that, 10 years from now we realize that it gives us all cancer. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I avoid it, right? So, One Broke Vegan says, what are your thoughts on maple syrup? Interesting you should ask. One, it's a fiberless sweetener, so it's just sugar with no fiber. That's not going to do you any favors, okay? It does have some minerals and stuff in it, so it's not horrible like white sugar, but it's not a health food as far as I'm concerned. If you cannot eat oatmeal without a little bit of maple syrup on it, obviously getting the oatmeal is better. But if you can learn how to eat unsweetened oatmeal, all the better, which I've done. It's not that bad. Maple syrup is also, I question its veganism because they drill into trees and then just, tap the frickin' trees for their whole lives. And it's kind of barbaric when I think about it. And just considering that, trees can feel, plants can feel in some way, just that they're constantly being drilled into and then having their sap drained, it kind of feels unethical, even though it's delicious. It's delicious, but I don't even know what to think about it anymore. I put syrup on everything, even potatoes and steaks. Oh dear. Levital says, really, erythritol for tooth enamel. Please explain more on that. No, it's xylitol for the tooth enamel. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there have been some studies that have found that it helps to draw minerals into the enamel. That's why a lot of dental products are now made with xylitol. There's that brand called Spry that specifically is big on the xylitol, and it's popping up everywhere now. But, Amber Michelle says, I recently switched to date sugar. It doesn't work great in teas, but it's awesome in smoothies. Yeah, it's the natural sweeteners, don't always dissolve the best, but, Oh, my says, yes, I'd love to hear about maple syrup too, as an addicted Canadian. The Needy Homemaker says, are there any health benefits to coconut sugar? Um, I mean, it it's made from the nectar from the flowers that that would then turn into coconuts. So, environmentally, it's supposedly not that bad. Supposedly, it contains minerals and stuff, but it's one of those things where I don't eat it because it's healthy. I eat it because it's less healthy than other available options, or it's less unhealthy than other available options. So I definitely don't eat it for my health. I just eat it because it seems like a good option to me at the time. I will probably switch to date sugar or just whole dates after this batch is gone. Okay. One Broke Vegan says, yeah, I never thought of that. Thanks. I'm getting myself used to going to fruits when I want sweets. I can't wait for the summer to have more options, though. Yeah. Mai says, oh my god, I never thought about the ethics of maple syrup. My mind is fucked. I feel you. I feel you. A friend of mine went, she's a vegan. A friend of mine, she went and visited a maple syrup farm, and then I watched some videos about it, and I was like, this is barbaric what they're doing to these trees. Jewel says plants, maple trees, they don't have a central nervous system to feel physical pain. And yes, you know, I totally understand that, plants don't have central nervous systems. The electrical impulses that they're capable of generating, they travel, but we don't know how they're registered. Like, we just don't know. I'm, I'm just like, well, I mean, I guess I don't have to eat maple syrup. So if I could survive without it and just eat a date or coconut sugar or something, then maybe I'll just opt for that. Like, just because it seems a little bit nicer. And maple syrup is so expensive. Like, you have to be independently wealthy to have maple syrup on a regular basis. Oh my goodness. Okay. So that'll take us to exercise. And you guys, we've gone for almost an hour without freezing or dropping this live stream. I am so grateful right now. So, hopefully we just keep going strong. All right. Lucy says, does every single fig have a wasp in it? I freaking love figs, damn it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what it appears to be. Jewel says dates are more sustainable. I have to agree. Yeah, probably. Yay, God bless you, computer. Thank you. I feel like you just jinxed us. See, but I feel like my jinxes are opposite because I've noticed that if I think something, but I don't say it, it happens. But if I say it, it's like it diffuses the energy and allows me to release it, and then it's less likely to happen. Just saying. Okay. Jessica White says, sorry, did you talk about brown rice syrup? I didn't, and brown rice syrup appears to have no real benefit. Dr. Greger mentions it in the chapter on beverages, and he kind of groups it with maple syrup of being, maybe not horrible, but not good either. So, that's... All right. Lol, if you bought them from the store, then those figs are fine. I mean, maple syrup ruined. Figs ruined. I'm sorry, Mai, you're having a bad day, aren't you? Yeah, okay, so the figs, like each fig, there's theoretically a wasp lays eggs inside the figs, and then in order to get out, one wasp kind of chews through the fig and then dies, and then the rest of the wasps leave. Supposedly, that's the only way that figs get pollinated. So if it weren't for these suicide mission wasps, then figs wouldn't exist. Are we saying that vegans can't eat them? That's not what I'm saying at all. I think that would be a ridiculous conclusion to make because of something natural that happens in nature that's outside of our control and produces a fruit. But, it's your choice. It's your choice. All right, exercise. Do you guys remember that BuzzFeed article from, it's like a year or two ago, and it said that exercise is completely worthless for weight loss? That it doesn't matter how much you exercise, it's not going to help you lose weight. And I think they are exactly right. I think that was a really spot on video because you can't exercise your way out of a crappy diet. And let us not forget that abs are made in the kitchen. We've all seen the meme, all right? So, when I think about exercise now, exercise used to be a way that I punished myself for being fat, okay? And what it always felt like. It felt like a chore, something I had to do so that I didn't get fat. Now, instead, I exercise because it's a healthy thing to do, because it's good for my body, it's good for